Even after having it for a while, I still don't really know what this smells like. And actually, this is kind of the beauty of it. Hello, welcome back to Seldomly Often. I'm Daniel. Today we're talking fragrances, and this is a practical review of Serge Lutens Chergui. These reviews are for fragrances I have a lot of experience with, multiple wears in many situations, and I'm meant to give you a general idea of what it feels to wear the fragrance. As per usual, I do a lot of research before buying fragrances, but I don't really like to go into details about notes and accords, as I don't really think that they help the end user. I'd rather talk about the wear experience as a whole. We're finally talking about this absolute masterpiece from the house of Serge Lutens. Chergui is one of those fragrances that I've been sitting on for a very long time. I've been looking at it, I've been wearing it, and I've been putting off the review for just as long. It's a very difficult fragrance to review for me because I like it so much, and I'm very protective of the fragrances that I like a lot, not because I want to gatekeep them or anything like that. It's just because I tend to put off the reviews because I really want to make the fragrances justice. It's really difficult for me to put certain smells into words in the proper way. And Chergui is definitely one of those fragrances that is highly evocative to me. It's highly important. I absolutely enjoy wearing this. Similarly to Portrait of a Lady by Frédéric Malle, to me Chergui by Serge Lutens is almost a perfect fragrance. The way it wears, the elegance factor, the refinement, the complexity yet simplicity, everything is just finely tuned. This fragrance is an absolute must-have if you're into good perfumery. I'm not even saying niche perfumery. If you're into good perfumery, like good, well-designed perfumery, you have to get your nose on Chergui. Backing up a little, let's talk about the house of Serge Lutens. This, as I mentioned in many videos, and specifically in my reviews for the couple or three Serge Lutens that I've covered, this is a very underrated house in the contemporary fragrance space. And what I mean by underrated is that this is one of those houses that doesn't get much press, it doesn't get much media coverage. It's very difficult to find new reviews about Serge Lutens on YouTube. The fragrances that they have been putting out lately have been good, but again, they fly way under the radar. And basically the house is known for the heavy hitters such as Chergui, such as Ambre Sultan, and they're kind of like these almost forgotten vintage gems at this point. None of the Serge Lutens fragrances that come to mind have a very modern wow-inducing effect, such as your modern gourmands from Initio, Parfums de Marly, Xerjoff. These are all very bold, very inflated fragrances, scent-wise. Most modern offerings lack a level of refinement, lack a level of curated design that is definitely present in most of the Serge Lutens catalog. Chergui is highly regarded as one of the best Serge Lutens to come out, and for good reason. This is an absolute milestone for the house and a milestone for the perfumer Christopher Sheldrake. As I mentioned in my intro, this is a very difficult fragrance to describe, and even today, after multiple wears, after owning this fragrance for a very long time, I barely know what this smells like. This is one of those fragrances that is both very narrative, very elaborate, but at the same time, it's designed to be very perfumey. And one of you guys asked me to elaborate on this concept. I use this term often, a very perfumey fragrance. What I mean is that some fragrances, usually the more innovative, usually the more daring, the more abstract, and the more experimental, kind of ignore the fact that the fragrance is meant to be worn, and to be worn to smell good or somewhat interesting or decent or mass appealing. And a lot of the fragrances from more niche and artisanal houses sometimes tend to forget this aspect. And if you take stuff from Orto Parigi or Nasomatto, stuff from Toscovat, some fragrances from Francesca Bianchi, they are very evocative, very narrative in a way, but they're not really designed for you to be worn in public. They're not really designed as a smell good fragrance. While some other niche houses like Frédéric Malle, like Serge Lutens, like MFK, they lean more perfumey and utilitarian in the aspect of wear experience, in the aspect of everyday use. So the fragrances come across as much more wearable, much more mass appealing, and they're not really offensive at all. They might be quirky and different, but they're never really off-putting. And Chergui definitely falls in this latter category of more perfumey fragrances. This has exceptional wearability drinkability, versatility. It's very mass appealing, it's very non-offensive, very elegant, it's very well put together. Yet it still retains a level of narrative, it still retains a lot of imagery potential. But we're going to talk about the scent profile, where I'm going to try to describe what this smells like after we touch upon the presentation. But before we touch upon the presentation, I want to quickly talk about the price point for these fragrances. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Serge Lutens is criminally underpriced right now. Very affordable, especially for the incredible quality of these masterpiece fragrances. These 50 ml bottles can be found at discounters for about 55 to 70 bucks, which is an absolute steal. I'm not even really sure why these are priced this way. It's almost sad to see these high quality products being kind of devaluated. But hey, I'm not complaining, because from the point of view of the consumer, you can get these absolute gems for an incredibly good deal. Okay, back to the presentation, and here when talking about Serge Lutens, this is a very quick and easy topic to cover. So Serge Lutens has very simple utilitarian presentation. Again, we can't really complain given the price point. It's functional, it works. I really can't say many bad things about these. The caps are simple, they're plastic, but they're quite solid. You can't really squish them with your cap, as you can do with other fragrances like Francesca Bianchi's. The atomizers are actually quite good. They're functional, especially compared to the price. And yeah, let's give it a couple sprays. Sprays a lot of liquid, easy to aim. Not pressurized, nothing to write home about, but it serves the purpose. An interesting aspect about these caps and atomizers is that the bottle doesn't really ship like this. It comes with a screw cap, and the atomizer itself is separate in the box. So you basically have to take off the little ball cap and put on the atomizer. I'm not really sure why this is, but I'm assuming that Serge Lutens wants the users to be able to use these fragrances as splash fragrance. I definitely prefer the atomizer, so much so that I think I don't even have the ball little round cap anymore. I might have just thrown it out with the box. Speaking of the box, it's this incredibly basic, very simple, thin cardboard box, which is basically disposable. Quickly touching upon the bottle, I have to say that it's decently made, especially for the price. You can easily see the seams. The labeling itself is fairly basic. It looks like a paper label. One last thing to note about the presentation for most Serge Lutens is that the liquid color is always very cool and very interesting. It's probably colored artificially, but I'm not complaining. This Chergui is dark, and it really gives me a vibe of the fragrance itself. Overall presentation for Chergui and the rest of the Serge Lutens line is good, but not great. You really can't complain given the price point. So yeah, all good, charming, I like it. Okay, time to talk about the scent profile, and time for me to try to explain what the scent smells like. As you may know, and as I repeat for every intro, for every video that I shoot, I really don't like covering notes. In this specific case, the notes are not useful at all. When you read tobacco, when you read hay, when you read rose, you really don't get a full picture of what Chergui is like. Yes, there are these components in the scent, but it's very difficult to isolate them within the scent cloud itself. This is a very well put together scent. It's very balanced. It's very elegant. And the whole scent comes at you in a unified way of a smell. It's very difficult to pick apart the individual ingredients. The picking out of the individual ingredients is usually something I praise in fragrance houses such as Amouage, where the fragrances are very three-dimensional and very photorealistic. But I actually think that Christopher Sheldrake with this release was actually aiming for that blurry cloud of scent that was difficult to pick apart and difficult to identify. This has to do with the fact that, again, this scent is very perfumey, and it's not necessarily supposed to be evocative of any specific ingredient. I feel that by masterfully blending all the ingredients in one unified scent cloud, you tend to focus more on the wear experience, you tend to focus more on the perfume itself, rather than trying to pick it apart. And this is something that we do as frag fanatics, as frag enthusiasts. We try to decompose something. In this case, I feel that one of the best approaches that you can have to fully enjoy Chergui is to just let it happen and to just be engulfed by the experience as a whole. But nonetheless, this is a fragrance review, and you're here in this video to know what this scent smells like. So I'm going to try to pick it apart. Following the marketing and naming, Chergui is referencing Eastern or Oriental. This fragrance is supposed to be inspired by Middle Eastern markets. warm spices, and desert areas. But the imagery I'm getting from this fragrance is actually quite different from what I just described. Chergui to me is all about farm fall vibes. The imagery I'm getting is a barn, a red tractor. Everything is bathed in this beautiful sunset light. There's hay fields that are drying up, there's pumpkin patches, there are vegetable gardens, and just a general golden warm air that envelops everything. It's one of those evenings where you want to just sit outside and enjoy the last hours of light, maybe sipping on some booze, maybe like smoking a cigar. There's a very relaxed type of feeling. And the highlights that I pick out in this fragrance are really reminiscent of that type of imagery. Definitely the first ingredient that comes to mind is sweet tobacco leaf. It's a very sweet, aromatic, very dry tobacco. It's reminiscent of something like Boundless from Amouage. There are accompanying spices to this. There's some cinnamon, there's some clove, there's some maybe some more culinary spices, but very, very slight, very elegant, and very well balanced. The scent has a beautiful warm sweetness to it that is a little bit honey-like. It's very syrupy, very sticky, but at the same time, the scent is incredibly dry and powdery. This might be due to the florals in here. I feel that there's iris, or maybe due to the woods. Maybe there's some sandalwood. I can't really pinpoint that hay component or the hay accord that's in here. I don't really know what hay smells like. Some people say that it smells like tobacco, and what I'm actually smelling is the hay. So yeah, I can't really speak much about the hay accord, but what I can say is that I get hay or a hay feeling in the imagery that this gives me. As I mentioned, one of the more unique aspects of this fragrance is the way it wears, and this has two components to it. The first one is the immense dynamic range that this fragrance has. The fragrance really hits on all tonal ranges. You have really high highs and really deep bass notes. And the high notes are actually the most surprising here, because you don't really feature the typical high notes that are found in most fragrances. You don't really get citruses, you don't really get those energetic, zingy spices. But there's something about the powderiness, there's something about the florals in here that really have a lot of energy to them, and they really ring at a high pitch. The bass notes are also very, very dynamic, and you don't really get your typical bass notes. You don't really get those deep vanilla gourmands. You don't really get those deep vetiver notes or deep wooden notes. But there's something about the way, again, these florals, the whole thing comes together, that it has a very deep kind of like tonal range, very deep bass, very deep presence to it. This scent is all about the presence. It's all about the way it really wears on your body. The other unique component of the wear experience is actually related to how this wears on your skin. It feels remarkably light despite having this massive tonal range, and despite being incredibly potent and long-lasting. When you first spray this fragrance on skin, you're immediately overwhelmed by this massive cloud of sillage. You have intense, loud projection for the first hour. The longevity on this overall is exceptionally good. I would say 8 hours of very good detectability and sillage around you. I can easily smell this at the end of a workday. It's such a beautiful, pleasing smell, but at the same time, again, it wears so light. It wears as a powder almost. It sits on the skin. It never really gets greasy. It never really gets heavy. It never really gets cloying. It accompanies you throughout the day with its deep presence, yet very clean, elegant vibe. In terms of transition and evolution, this fragrance is very difficult to talk about still, because if you can't really understand what's in the scent, it's really difficult to pinpoint the differences between the opening and the dry down. What I can say is definitely that the performance goes down significantly after about an hour. And this is where the fragrance transitions to a skin scent, or more of a skin scent. Again, still very detectable by its nature. But in terms of scent profile, it's actually really difficult to describe what's going on. From the opening to the dry down, you definitely lose a lot of the florals. You definitely lose a lot of those powdery, very fresh notes. And the scent dries down, again, still fresh, but it's a little bit more of a woody type of freshness. I would say that the general vibe of the fragrance itself remains intact throughout the wear, so you're not going to really transition in mood or expectations. This is a very predictable, stable scent. Continuing on the practicalities, I have to say that this fragrance leans a little bit more elegant. It's not about the scent profile per se. You don't really need to dress this up. It's all about the presence that this thing gives you. You need a sort of confidence. You need a sort of acknowledgement of the fragrance in order to properly pull it off. Once you get used to this, and if this fits your scent preferences, you could probably pull this off year round. This is easily a 4-season scent. It can be even a signature scent. It's very deep, it's very dense, but the wear experience of it, the lightness of it, makes it particularly suitable even for like summer nights. I wore this to the office many times. It's very beautiful, very clean. It's mass appealing enough that it would definitely not offend anyone. I never got any compliments, but I'm sure that this scent was noticed because again, it has massive projection and I'm sure that it was appreciated. Before giving you my final recommendations, I'm going to touch upon a couple options as I've been doing for my latest videos. Coming up with options for Chergui has been incredibly difficult just because of how unique the fragrance is and how unique it wears. But nonetheless, here are 3 options that at the very least will open the conversation. The first option for Chergui is actually Xerjoff Richwood. This fragrance does not really smell like Chergui, nothing really does. What it has in common with Chergui is the beautifully blended elements, really difficult to identify and to pick apart. This is a floral, woody fragrance. It's very beautiful, very unisex. It's supposed to be reminiscent of Chanel Coromandel. I really haven't smelled them together to compare, but I find this absolutely unisex, very, very elegant. Similarly again to Chergui, this could also be 4-season wear, almost signature scent worthy. The projection, the type of wear experience is also very similar to Chergui, so I can feel that they cover the same sort of vibe. This does not evoke those fall evening images that Chergui does. This is a lot more neutral. This doesn't really give me any sort of imagery or narrative. It's just a very beautiful scent that's very well done and very long lasting. This is a very, very expensive fragrance. It retails basically for over 5 times the price of Chergui. And for this alone, it's very, very difficult for me to recommend it, especially compared to Chergui. My second recommendation is from the house of Meo Fusciuni. This is Odor 93. This has surprisingly a lot in common with Chergui, not much in terms of scent profile per se, but in terms of vibe. This is a tuberose and tobacco fragrance. It's very deep, it's very dark. Similarly to Chergui, it has a very extended tonal range. This has a very interesting top note. It's very medicinal, it's very balsamic in a way. It's super unique. I really like it. I really like the house of Meo Fusciuni. This is an absolute must sample if you like Chergui and if you're looking for something that has the same sort of wearability. This is an incredibly evocative and relaxing scent. Meo Fusciuni is an artist and a poet. All of his creations are very moody and very romantic, and I really do appreciate this aspect of this fragrance. It's very elegant, but it's also very recognizable. And this might be a little bit more daring for day-to-day activities such as office wear or just out and about wear. I really like this, but this is more of a supplement to Chergui rather than a real option. My last recommendation is from the house of Nasomatto, and this is Baraonda. Now, Baraonda is known to be a very boozy forward fragrance, and I can attest to that. But the thing that makes it so unique and actually really comparable to Chergui is the way the thing is put together. It's masterfully blended. It comes across as a unified smell. It's very difficult to pick this apart, as with a lot of Nasomatto fragrances. One of the aspects of Baraonda that really reminds me of Chergui is the floral component matched with the sweetness. This is a very sweet floral fragrance that again comes across as a unified cloud of smell. Vibe-wise, it can be sort of complementary to Chergui. It has a similar type of feeling. Again, it doesn't really evoke those fall images, but this is a very cuddly, very beautiful, very elegant scent. And I do feel that if you can pull off Chergui, you can probably wear this in the same sort of situations. This is a little bit more potent. This has a little bit more projection. It's a little bit more daring in a way because, well, it has a Nasomatto imprint here. And similarly to Odor 93, you might not want to wear this all the time in day-to-day activities like every day at the office or as your signature scent. It can be very fatiguing, very polarizing. Okay, back to Chergui with my final recommendations. In short, this is a masterpiece. It's almost a perfect fragrance. If you're into this type of idea, if you're into this type of concept, Just go out, blind buy this, thank me later. This is an absolutely gorgeous unisex fragrance that can be enjoyed by anyone who is into fragrances, who is into high quality products, who is into well-designed products. If for whatever reason you decided that you can only give the house of Serge Lutens one chance, it gotta be Chergui. Especially for the price, you can't go wrong with this absolute masterpiece of a fragrance. If you like this type of content, if you like my approach to video, feel free to subscribe. It's always massively appreciated and it helps the channel. If you want to interact with me, leave a comment, suggestion, opinion, or anything else down below. I always reply and I always keep the conversation open. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. It's never taken for granted. As per usual, many more videos to come, many more reviews. See you in the next one. Cheers.